Welcome to Beneath the Grandstand, episode number 26, and really the first episode of season 2, season 2021 here. Alex, it's kind of weird because we haven't talked on the pod in a while, but fortunately I've been able to talk to you a little bit since our last pod. So I'd say, man, it's a long time since I heard from you, but that'd be a lie. So how you doing?
I'm doing good. I am very stoked to be back on the mic. Haven't been on the mic in a while, and it's we're coming up on real deal track season here, Ryan, and things feel like they're getting back to normal. You know, we had kind of a big relays weekend last weekend, a lot of track action, and it's kind of teeing things up for a big Olympic summer. It's going to happen. I believe we're going to have it.
Fingers
Our
crossed.
sport
Fingers
is
crossed.
our sport is moving forward, and I guess sports in general are moving forward. And I think our guest today, leaning into the fact that we had a meet at Hayward this weekend, is a great person to lead perspective on, I guess, the future of our sport and how we give a nod to it, but how we also innovate and move forward.
Yeah, I'm just going back on what you said about Olympics and moving things forward this year. So hopeful. It was, there was I want to say it was like a few weeks ago, a month ago. It was an official in Japan said, "Oh, there's a chance we could cancel the games," and it was I don't know what happened, but very quickly, the verbiage coming out of Japan changed, and everything since has been the games are definitely happening. Here's all the things we're doing. The games are happening. The games are happening. Maybe there's no fans, but games are happening. I can just see Thomas Bach picking up the phone after that news came out weeks ago and being like, no more of that, please. These Olympics are happening, and you need to be on board. That's how I envision it happening. So it seems like
it
full
just
steam
shows how
ahead at this
crippling
point.
like a little tweet can be. You know what I mean? Like literally crippling to so many people involved in here. But kudos to the athletes and everybody who's been hanging tight, and we appreciate you guys hanging tight with us. We're excited to dive into another season of, I think we have a couple guests that are in the hopper here, and we're really, really excited about them. We think they represent really like the key stakeholders in the sport right now, and the people who are shaping not just our sport, but sport in general, and the people who have historical knowledge and the actual keys and knowledge and vision to open the aperture of what's next for amateur athletes, college athletes, professional athletes, Olympics, major sports, and all the above. We're gonna get insights from everybody this summer.
Yeah, there's so many good conversations to have, and conversations that don't necessarily need to be around an event or a performance, but more around just perspective and history and what is trending forward in different areas of sport, and how we can look ahead and kind of dig deeper into some of those things. So I'm really excited about it, and excited about some of the guests we have lined up, and excited about our guests that we have today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just teeing that up perfectly, Ryan. Today, bringing on the legendary Tinker Hatfield. If you do not know Tinker Hatfield, well, walk outside and find somebody with a pair of Jordans on. He is the lead designer of the Jordan. He joined, I think, the Jordan line in maybe the third version, but he is really the man who's attributed to that steadfast innovation and design of fostering that whole franchise. And who knows where Nike would be now if the Jordan franchise wouldn't have been propped up and kind of enabled the Nike magic. So he's worked on the Jordan. He helped launch the original Air Max line, but at his core, he's a pole vaulter. He's a man of Oregon. He trained under Bill Bowerman, and it's really interesting to see how those influences still are kind of like at his core, and he still has that he still has that allegiance, right, to track and field. And I think we as fans are grateful for that, and glad that he's still around and so relevant. And I think for if you want like a quick synopsis of him, and I reference this in our interview, go on Netflix, watch his episode on the series called Abstract. And they do like such
really
a great job.
episode.
And I think they do the best job of like framing him as a human being, like framing him as an athlete before being just like, the streetwear hype man, right? I think he's, beloved by, sneakerheads, and like rightly so. But I think the abstract episode gives just like, shapes a little bit of more of like what his actual influences are.
Yeah, and if you're watching this on video, I think in abstract they show his studio, which I think, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, is the studio he is in for the recording. So pretty cool. Correct. As well. One quick story. When I first met Tinker, you said if you don't know who Tinker is, I thought you were just going to say go outside and leave, but you said go outside and look at Jordans, and he's the guy. I didn't know who he was when I first met him, and the reason I didn't know who he was in the context of Jordan. Right when I got introduced to Tinker, it was in 2009. I knew Tinker was a designer at Nike who had ran at Oregon under Bill Bowerman, and he had been the one picked to design the Bowerman Award trophy. And if you know anything of the Bowerman Award, it's this huge, beautiful thing with kind of the track wing and the waffle bottom on it, and so we were in. I think it was so heavy. Yeah. I think we were in Orlando that year. I think Galen Rupp and Jenny Behringer at that time, now Jenny Simpson, won the award that year. And I got to interview Tinker. And it was right before the interview that someone told me about his connection to the Jordan line. And as a kid growing up, I mean, I love the Jordan shoes. And it was always kind of the shoe that like I wanted. I thought they were probably way too expensive. I also didn't think I was a good enough basketball player to deserve them. I did get, I think, 1 or 2 pairs through like middle school, and it was like a game changer. But when I learned that, it was just like, oh my God, this is the guy who developed the shoe that was like the talk of my childhood, right? And so getting to know him, getting to know his background as someone that grew up as a runner, knowing he came from the same place and did these things that has touched so many people, it's been really cool. So again, really, really excited to have a conversation with him, get his insight on a number of different things. And unfortunately, as you listen on, you'll realize I'm not really asking many questions because during the actual recording, I was unfortunately not able to be there. So Alex, you really lucked out on this one and got a lot of one-on-one time with Tinker, which is rare. Not a lot of people get to do it. So pretty awesome experience, I would say, for you.
I feel very, very lucky. And like I mentioned in the episode, I admired him from afar when I was at the brand with the 3 stripes across the street from his studio. So it was a cool moment for me. And I think he offers up some amazing insights, and we are extremely excited to share this conversation with you. So we'll kick it off here. Season 2 of Beneath the Grandstand with the one and only Tinker Hatfield. All right, Tinker Hatfield, we are absolutely grateful that you are kicking off season 2 officially of Beneath the Grandstand. And sir, where do we find you today?
Today we are broadcasting live from my studio in Northeast Portland at home.
Good stuff. Well, I'm sure that's challenging. Well, maybe I'll kick it off as how you're adapting as a designer. I mean, you are operating kind of in a silo when you're not on campus and able to collaborate with other people and being kind of influenced by other creatives in your space. How tough is it to be siloed in this over the last year?
Yeah, I think everybody has their own stories of adaptation, right? So here we are, we're all adapting to a new and different world. And I think some of these adaptations are going to stick, which is basically people working from home a bit more. But for me, it hasn't been maybe as dire or as difficult because, I work on an iPad or with a sketch pad, and I speak to people, I interview people, and I try and, basically dig into projects and do some design work and problem solving. And that is, I've been able to do that. I've been able to adapt to not seeing people in person. And then, of course, all the work that I do can be digitally sent to our teams, our technical teams. So that's been a pretty easy transition. I would say though, maybe the one caveat to the whole answer is that we all miss the friendships and the personal collaborations and all of the information that gets exchanged with body language and just being in the same room. So that is I think that's been noteworthy from the point of view that I'm just crossing my fingers that the work is still as good as it should be, without that kind of interaction.
Yeah. So, with building on that, without that interaction and kind of that, other outside influence, I'd love to know, outside shoes, outside footwear, track and field, what is inspiring you today? We've seen in some other, documentaries, the Netflix doc, showcase some of your affinity for motorcycles and surfing, but has there been anything, over the last year that you've become infatuated with, that has caught your eye, that you've found yourself diving deeper into maybe another subculture?
That's a great question. I think that we're all missing a lot of things. We're all missing a lot of interactions, and live music is. I'm a big music fan, and I haven't been able to go listen or watch live music. But I've been forced to actually practice and play a little myself on separately, which I'm not very good. But I'm kind of still, I guess you could say, kind of infatuated with the creative process of not only trying to play music but also write it. And so I'm into that still. And maybe the pandemic, since I don't have to spend quite so much time traveling. Maybe there's a little more time in there for doing some of that, and I'm inspired by that, and so that's one thing. But I would like to point out though that my primary source of inspiration and my primary reason for doing what I do is to help athletes perform, and in so doing, also maybe create some fun products in the world that people like and enjoy, and that hasn't changed one bit. That part is I watch, I'm watching sports on TV, and there are some local, like I've just watched my grandson, who's 6, hit a T-ball and it went 5 feet maybe, but it was in play and he didn't even know that he was supposed to run. And so his coach said, run. So he ran to first base, and somebody didn't throw the ball that way, and they threw it the wrong way. And then he rounded second. And then they just said, keep running. And he rounded third, and he got a home run. And he hit the ball 5 feet. And I thought that was just, so I got it all on video. It was hysterical. It was hysterical because, T-ball, nobody can catch or throw. I mean, it's really interestingly funny. And here he got his first hit ever, went 5 feet, and he got an inside the park home run. So I'm kind of like, that's kind of cool. That's sports, right? That's being inspired by sport in some way.
Absolutely. It is funny how we, especially I have a 6-year-old, and it is funny how we put them in games before they know even how to play the sport, right? You have T-ball games before the kids can even throw and catch. It's so funny. Well, I'm glad
the same is true when we watched them play soccer, and they're all kind of huddled around the ball. Nobody knows that you're supposed to pass, and whatever, it's all that stuff. And so I think that I'm looking forward, of course, to getting down to Hayward Field to see some track meets. Maybe I'll be fortunate enough to get in the gate, maybe not. But I'm looking forward to that. Potentially being a part of the track scene at a little bit higher level than a T-ball game. So.
Well, we'll dive into Hayward. We'll dive into new Hayward Field, which is hosting a relatively solid elite event this weekend. I know, but I knew you were coaching were you volunteering some JV pole vaulting? Or are you
Well,
still doing some of
I
that coaching
haven't
on the side?
been. I've been retired from that for 2 years, but
Okay.
I was the pole vault coach at Grant High School here in Portland as a volunteer for 23 years. And I also kind of moonlighted, and I would sneak over and help coach at Lincoln High School as well. Just because there just aren't a lot of people who know, the event. Plus, it just is a costly event, and I was trying to provide poles and other equipment for those two high schools. So I did that for 23 years, and more recently, though, because of grandchildren duties, and we have 3 grandsons in town, and then I have 4 other grandchildren outside of town. I've had to shift my priorities and to pay attention and participate in the lives of those grandkids. So of my grandkids. So that doesn't really leave room to be a volunteer coach right now. But who knows? Maybe I'll get back to it at some point.
Well, being grandpa is a full-time job, so I appreciate. I'm glad that you're able to find a vessel for some sport and inspiration.
Well,
there
we'd have these
with
track practices, and at Grant High School we'd have 30 pole vaulters, and
30.
The practices would start, right after school, but wouldn't because there's just a lot of work that needs to be done, and there's a lot of standing in line, and I wouldn't get out of that practice until 6:30 at night, and so the time it's a little bit different than maybe coaching some other events where there's not quite so much equipment, and quite frankly, again, we had a huge group of athletes, so it was like I would come home just exhausted every day, and then go back to Nike in the morning. So I'm kind of maybe you could say I'm recharging my batteries a little bit with the grandkids, and then maybe I'll get back into some form of coaching and or involvement in track. Maybe as an official.
Good stuff. Oh, yes. Well, I mean, there is no better give back, I think, to our sport than being a volunteer official, because they make the events run, and they are running thin on that. So anybody listening,
absolutely, it's always
heed Tinker's knowledge.
For those head track coaches to find people to get out and to man the events and keep the thing running, keep the track meets running.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Okay, Tinker. So, I wanted to kick things off. I you have a couple themes today, but I think what's most prominent on what I would call our culture, like the running culture in particular, is the discussion around the recent evolution of carbon plated racing flats. And I think it's relevant to have you on, because not only is it important to kind of this running culture, but what I love about where running footwear fits in the overall kind of dichotomy of sports footwear is it seems like performance experimentations and innovations almost start either on the track or on the road. And what an incredible opportunity we have to kind of be that kind of that guinea pig our sport is. And so absolutely. I wanted to draw a parallel for you. And so so one of your first major projects at Nike was the Air Max. And I think last month we celebrated Air Max Day, and it was 21 years ago that it launched. And so the Air Max was defined by this tangible, kind of almost divisive piece of visible technology, right? This visible air pocket. And it was, like I said, it was a little divisive, a little jarring, but it kind of became this defining silhouette of sneaker culture. And then, but in 2017, we kind of had a similar renaissance with racing footwear, where the world was rocked by this new carbon-plated Vaporfly 4%, and it had this really different silhouette to it, right? It had this giant stack height, it had this huge midsole, it had that kind of elongated swoosh, right? And that silhouette and that kind of identity has kind of become the icon of next level performance and that next evolution of what running can be. So I'm just curious, when you parallel the challenges of, what the designers faced in 2017 with rolling out the next percent with what you were faced with, with that Air Max and that giant air pocket that everybody could see, how challenging is it as a designer to embrace a completely new innovation to both the engineering of a shoe, but also make it a core part of the aesthetic?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a many faceted question, and I'll try not to blab on too long. But the reality is that some designers are innovators, and the best innovators are well suited to seek new and different ways to solve problems. And hopefully, along with solving a problem, there's a kind of a merging of technology and aesthetics that makes a product look interesting and exciting. And so, back in the Air Max One days, that clearly was controversial. It was internally controversial, and then it was externally controversial for a minute. I'm just well suited to kind of basically. I've just got a thick skin, and I took some internal arrows in the back here and there, but because people didn't think it would sell and that there would be problems with the bags puncturing, and also I don't know, the wear testing was significantly uh, 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 a part of the decision making to go forward with that project, because people were noticing they could feel the air better because of that bag being able to expand into the openness of the midsole. So all of those things, and I had to fight a few battles, I kind of, I guess maybe it's my sports training, my sports background, but you just sort of have to like stand up for what you believe in and try and make it happen. So that's kind of what happened, I guess, in the original Air Max One, and I think that that particular phenomena has not changed, even though we've seen all kinds of new ideas come and go. People in general are resistant to change. They're resistant to something they don't understand. They might even be resistant to a particular individual who's working on something. So that's just so when we look at the new technology with the carbon fiber plates, this same kind of people who were concerned about visible air and air itself, they still exist. There's still naysayers, and there are people that are uncomfortable with something that's that different. And I'm just like, that's what we're supposed to do. I think we're all supposed to leave a mark. I think we're all supposed to do something to further our goals, to further a sport, or to further the ability of people to participate in sports. And so, in this case, that carbon fiber plate, we first used it in a basketball shoe in 1984. I designed the Air Jordan 11, which came out in 85 and 86 actually. That was the first time we used carbon fiber, and it made a big. That shoe is still a big shoe today, the Air Jordan 11 with the patent leather, but it actually came with a carbon fiber plate, and which, by the way, was inspired by a track spike in the first place, and also football cleats that had plates. And I just remember how springy I felt when I would put on a new pair of football cleats and went out to play in a football game. And I'm like, wow, these things, I feel super fast. And so, and that's the same thing. I think when you put on a brand new pair of competition track spikes, I think it's like, whoa, man, these babies feel fast. I'm gonna rock it. And in some ways, I guess that thinking, got transferred to longer races, and so certainly we've seen some unbelievable results through wear testing and the actual application of the carbon fiber plate sitting on two big airbags, and the results kind of speak for themselves. And yeah, I think it got banned. If I'm not certain, if I'm not wrong, I think it got banned a little bit here and there, and that we figure that's probably a good sign that that we've done something truly innovative. Oops, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So you teased this a little bit at the end of the abstract documentary, and it was, something along the lines of, there are people out there or designers out there that are really great at the art of subtle nuance, right? Subtle changes and, kind of, I guess, massaging the evolution, let's say, of a footwear line. But the Jordan and the 4%, those are massive swings, right? And it's so interesting
Yeah.
that, I guess and it sounds like from your perspective, like to get those changes actually sold through, to make big swings actually sold through, upwards and the sign off across a brand. You need a certain type of armor as a designer and a tough skin as a designer,
Yeah.
but also you need that like direct consumer feedback. Do you feel like the Air Max would have launched if you didn't have consumer feedback that said, "Hey, this feels right. This is working for me"?
Yeah, I think the answer is the affirmative. That if the projects, at least the ones that I'm involved with that are innovative and more in a more advanced and maybe ambitious way, they would never get launched if there weren't maybe multiple good reasons, like more than one reason. So so the Air Max one and the Vaporfly and all that stuff, those things. They might, to a lot of people seem a little bit ahead of their time, or a little bit spacey, or a little wild. But when the wear testing comes back, or the actual performance information that we seek with every innovative project, when it comes back so in such high regard, it's really hard. It's really difficult for even the most stodgy people to say no. And by stodgy, I mean at Nike, there are people that are trying to protect the company from people like me, like doing too much weird stuff and not enough stuff that people want to buy. So, and I think that's legit. But overall, we still the world still needs to be excited now and then, for sure. And hopefully there are good reasons for that excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talk about excitement, and I think, in especially in the track world, right? We kind of live and die by these, I guess, tech specs, right? We're all about, product innovation, and we kind of, every time a new shoe or model rolls out, we want to understand the new tech around it, right? And I keep referencing your abstract episode, but I really love the quote that you actually opened up with. And you said, "My job is to make talking about feet. My job is to make these very capable natural instruments perform even better." So acknowledging that the human foot is an amazing piece of technology. But as we continue to evolve footwear technology, when do we cross the line of the shoe is enabling the function of the foot to the foot is enabling the engineering of the shoe? Do you ever worry about that?
Yeah, I think it's one of those back of mind kind of concerns. Like I'm supposed to be, and the people in advanced innovation at Nike, which we have hundreds. We're all trying to improve performance any way we can, within the legal parameters of a sport. But there's always kind of a concern, in the background that at what point do you become Iron Man, and you can fly around and you can do stuff that you shouldn't really be able to do, right? And where technology becomes too omnipotent, and maybe unfair, makes competition unfair. So I think we all sort of think about that in kind of in the background, and I will tell you that there's all kinds of technology that we don't do of that. So I think that going back to carbon fiber plates and sitting on top of stacked airbags, um, um, to me, there isn't there there's not necessarily a mechanical advantage um, like like a spacesuit or like taking off with jet engines or anything like that. It's really what I would say is an attempt to make a shoe as efficient as possible. So you still have to be able to run and run fast. You have to make that, you have to have the turnover and the stride length and everything that it takes to be a good performer to make those shoes work. I mean, you can't all of a sudden be a crummy 5,000-meter runner and all of a sudden you're world class. That just doesn't work that way, right? So I think even though it looks pretty wild, the new stuff, it isn't crossing that line yet, and I think we're somewhat aware that it's possible at some point we could cross that line, but I don't think we've done it. And in fact, we've kind of gone out of our way not to in some cases.
Well, it's almost fair to say, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, that's low tech, right? Like, you've been talking about carbon plated shoes, like that was in a Jordan shoe, like a long time ago, and like airbags, like in the grand scheme of things, like this is relatively low tech. So, but it's almost like designers like you, like you can't be the arbiter of truth of what crosses the line and what doesn't, right? And I think we've played in that space a little bit, right? The IAAF did step in a little bit and said, 40 millimeters is too much, but it's almost like, you almost like you need to be as a designer, right? Like you're almost given the runway to go and fly as far as you want until you get your hands slapped, right?
I believe that's an accurate statement. And I think it's my job. I think it's my job and the 400 or 500 people that work in advanced innovation at Nike, and that's above and beyond our normal design group. So this is just advanced innovation. We have a huge group of people that are trying to improve human performance, right? So we have I think we all sort of feel like our job is to help people not just run faster but run safer and actually be able to perform what they love doing longer, so that they can go maybe take some mileage almost off of their years because of these products. And so there's a couple different ways to look at this advanced innovation and performance. And there's a stopwatch involved with Olympic athletes and people trying to make the Olympic team or in a professional sport. But a lot of what we do is really just trying to help people get out there every day and do what they love to do. So there's a certain amount of advanced innovation that goes into that very sort of notion. I can't.
Sorry, there's a sliding scale of those innovations, right? They kind of play off of each other. And it's like, we saw the 4% roll out, but then, recently I think the Invincible, right, was rolled out, and that was kind of touted as, imagine if runners could be, could run injury free, and that was not weighing down on your life. And like the compounding interest of being able to put together months and months of injury free training, like, isn't that really what we all want? So like, building on top of that, I think you in your past, Tinker, like you built technology around some of the most dynamic athletes like to ever play the game. Michael Jordan, Andre Agassi came in, and he was like, like you said, anti-tennis almost, right? But he was how critical how critical is it from a designer's perspective to have an athlete personify the concepts you're trying to bring to life?
Oh, great question. I think that's one of the most important missing links for a lot of designers and or companies is that they may have a great idea. There may be a new invention or a new idea, but there's a lot of noise out there, and there are a lot of naysayers, and just a lot of hustle and bustle, and attaching an influencer, whether it's a world's best tennis player or Michael Johnson on the track, back in the day with the gold spikes, and of course somebody today like LeBron James or previously Michael Jordan. All of those, what those people are really doing for us is they're validating the idea in the minds of our own internal, not just our internal people, but also our alpha, what we call our alpha consumers, which are the ones that are the early adopters. And then it becomes kind of like a domino effect. If the early adopters get onto a new technology, a new product, then other people keep following like dominoes, and ultimately you get to the point where there isn't probably a handful of kids in America who doesn't know what an Air Jordan is, but many years ago it was all about trying to work with an important influencer like Michael Jordan, and then convince the early adopters. And so that's just the way that's the way we've seen it kind of progress over the years. So it's extremely important to get feedback from these top athletes, because they have a lot to tell you about performance, but they also have a lot of influence on a certain part of our population. So we rely on that. I rely on that a lot. And without it, it's really difficult sometimes to get anybody's attention.
You were chatting about I remember when you told the story about Michael Jordan and the black cat, right? And
Yeah.
the shoe almost, he embodied the idea of a black cat. He embodied this silhouette of that Jordan. But it's funny, like when I think of someone like an Eliud Kipchoge, right? And I think of the 4%, it's almost, I almost think when I put those two, if I would have saw those two in abstractly, I would never have put that shoe, and I would have never personified it as Eliud Kipchoge, right? And it kind of goes back to my is the athlete embodying the technology, or is the technology embodying the athlete? But now it's so interesting, but that I associate that shoe with the idea of Eliud Kipchoge, which is, it's a piece of innovation and technology, but it can't be brought to life unless it's put on the machine, the efficient machine that is Eliud Kipchoge. And it's so interesting how our minds start to shift and accept and personify these pieces of technology.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're quite aware that Nike partners with universities and the NBA and the NFL and Major League Baseball and worldwide soccer, in part because they're influencing these top athletes, and teams are influencing people and helping us maybe put our concerns on the back plate a little bit, because someone else is kind of testing it for you and doing well. And so there's just a lot of human psychology involved in also just trying to be cool and hip, because somebody else who's cool and hip is wearing something. So I think that with Eliud Kipchoge, I don't think that we there's kind of two approaches here. With Michael Jordan, there was so much written about him. A lot of people just knew who he was, knew about him, and knew his personality. And then that allows us to tell a story about him, because because people are interested, and or maybe they already know some of the story in the first place. and therefore you can design their personality right into the very product, and it becomes kind of like a nice, sort of reciprocal kind of a relationship where things just keep rolling. One thing leads to another, and it kind of circles back around and just keeps rolling. With Elliott, not as many people know a world-class runner, say, versus a world-class basketball player. And that's not a criticism one way or another. It's just the reality of an audience. And so with Elliott, it's more like, okay, here's basically the best marathoner in the world, and we're gonna experiment with him and see if we can't push the human limits a little bit further, and therefore, in a sense, he probably becomes a better influencer kind of after the fact than before, because he did what he did. So it's just those are actually two kind of distinctly different approaches to trying to get people to pay attention to what you're doing. So there you have it.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think they're so distinct, right? But they still have such a profound effect. Where the Michael Jordan story was known and followed and storied, but where Elliott kind of represented the unknown, and that's almost what the 4% started to represent, right? It was this what could happen, right? And we knew that the ability was there.
2 hours. I mean, my God, who is that guy?
Right.
And of course, we were ready to tell that story after the fact, rather than before, almost, because it's a different dynamic.
Absolutely. I'd love to. I have two more questions about footwear and the kind of the journey of well, I guess your journey alongside seeing the development of Nike track and field and running. I think it's so interesting as when we look at your biography, Tinker, it's like this guy is a track and field man at his core, right? And he's a pole vaulter. He lived under. He's a Bowerman man, and so it's like but your career took you in a couple different business segments, obviously, which that diversity and probably made you an overall better designer. But as someone entrenched on the Jordan brand for so long, but being a track and field person at their core, what was it like to be kind of on the outside of the sport you love? Like running has always been the guiding light for the brand, but was there any moments that you were kind of torn at your soul because you didn't think that track was being prioritized or was going the wrong way?
Oh yeah. Well, the answer to that is that I actually designed shoes for Carl Lewis for the Olympics in Barcelona, and Sergei Bubka in the pole vault, and so I've been doing track and field stuff all along.
So you had your affirmation. You had accomplished.
Yeah. So there, and more recently, I worked with my brother Toby, who is just absolutely the best track and field shoe designer developer I've ever seen. And I've been working with him, on our own. We're both partial to the pole vault because we're both pole vaulters. So we have Nike pole vaulting shoes, specific pole vaulting shoes on most of the world-class pole vaulters in the world, except for just a few. And so, it's like, even though Michael Jordan probably doesn't even know that I have done a track spike, to be honest, because it just wasn't apropos to our conversations. It just wasn't. And so there are a lot of people that just simply are unaware of those kinds of projects that just don't quite get into the super hype level. Let's put it that way. So, although I have to say I really enjoyed working with Carl Lewis and his and Mr. Powell, because they were like going at it, and so that was a lot of fun. I've been going to the Olympics for a long time because we've been designing products for people, and but having said that, I am not really a distance runner, as you probably might know. I was a sprinter, a hurdler, and a pole vaulter, And even though I worked on many distance running shoes, my internal kind of mechanism for getting like excited and perked up, it sort of ramps up more when I'm kind of a little more associated with speed rather than distance. Speed and because that's who I am. I do though love we loved working with Ashton Eaton. You've mentioned his name already, and he could do kind of almost anything. And then of course we have all these athletes that we've done, these runners that have done well in our products, and I am extremely proud of the work that we've done. But when someone asks me what I used to run at Nike, I'm often asked, well, we heard you were a track athlete at Oregon. What did you run? And my answer is, I ran about 150 feet. And it's kind of like a snarky response to the fact that no, I was not a runner. I was a sprinter and a hurdler and a pole vaulter. So, so
you were an athlete.
There you have it.
Well, it's interesting. Some might, I gotta wonder, the pedigree of like at your core, you thought, like speed and explosiveness first, right? Like that was like baked into your DNA when you walked into a project because of your background. Like sometimes one could wonder if things like the Jordan wouldn't be as innovative or perform the way that they do if they weren't, built on the pillars of your speed and explosiveness background.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to the fact that we are all more capable if we've had some personal insight and experience, and that we have have that kind of in your DNA, so to speak. So I don't though want anybody to think that I'm disparaging of distance running, because I'm great friends, with Galen Rupp, and I was friends with Steve Prefontaine. He and I were on the team together at the University of Oregon, and there have been all kinds of Sebastian Coe. I'm no Sebastian Coe, and I wouldn't call him a distance runner. He's kind of a middle distance runner, I guess. But I just love track all the way around. And my first roommate was Mac Wilkins at the University of Oregon on a road trip. He made me carry around.
Dropping some names here, Tinker.
His discuses, and I was a rookie. I was a freshman, and he was I believe he was an outgoing. He might have been a senior or junior. I forgot. Anyway, so I just love track all the way around. So I have. If somebody said, work on, please help this athlete, I would jump on the case. But you're right about this sort of natural kind of focus that I have on speed and quickness and power. Yeah.
I can't let slide a pre-mention. So I gotta wonder. Imagine Pre was handed something that looked like the 4%. How do you think he'd react to that?
I think he'd be very suspect. And in fact, he was not a big fan of the early Nike shoes at all. And Bill Bowerman struggled mightily to get him to switch. And he really didn't switch until his basically, I think it was his junior year. Then he switched to Nike. So, and yet the Nikes had been around for roughly almost 2 years. It took about a year and a half to get him to switch. So I think that he was a tough guy to please, and he was demanding of himself, and he was demanding of others, and he, even though his track coach was designing shoes, he didn't want to compromise or risk too much. Having said that, again, he finally came around to wearing Nikes and they were and he was proudly a great ambassador for Nike in the when it in the early years.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more question about track spikes and footwear in particular. You mentioned that you're at your studio in Northeast Portland. I actually used to work at Adidas for a few years, and Adidas is actually pretty close to your studio. And I remember,
Yeah.
Across the street from your studio is a bar called the Old Gold. And I remember sitting over there after we had like a whatever happy hour with the business unit team, and Ultra Boost had just rolled out, and we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. And I remember looking across the street and seeing your studio and thinking, I wonder if he ever thinks about us. And so my question for you, Tinker, is when was the last time a brand that wasn't Nike surprised you?
When was I surprised?
Yeah. When was the last time a brand surprised you?
That's a tough question, because I will tell you that I actually don't pay attention to other brands in footwear. And there's a real reason for that, which is I just do not want to be caught flat-footed or trying to copy anything that anybody else is doing in my chosen area of expertise. So I can't even remember ever being surprised and or even that interested in what anybody else is doing in the world of performance footwear. There are tons of ex-Nike people that work at Adidas, and there's a few that have gone back the other way. And it's not that I don't think that Adidas and Puma and Reebok don't do good work. I just don't want to be a follower. That's just not my job. And there are probably other people at Nike that know every product in the Adidas line. But that's not me. I just don't do it. Now, having said that, I'm really interested in the new technology in bicycles and cars and motorcycles and skateboards. I have a one wheel that I ride around. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a gyroscopic single tired. It's like a snowboard on with a giant tire in the middle of it, and I ride that around. It's really interesting technology, and so I follow that stuff more, and I'm very, very interested to see what we, meaning Nike and the Jordan brand, can do, and Converse for that matter, can do with some clever new innovations that are popping up outside of our industry. So that's my best answer to that question. And again, I feel like that there are people building great running shoes outside of our company, outside of Nike. But it's just not, I just personally am trying to not pay much attention to it. And it helps me in a sense stay a little bit more innovative with a uniquely Nike kind of flair. And
it's totally fair.
Therefore, maybe there's some continuity too along the way.
Well, that actually aligns with one of my favorite pieces of advice I've gotten in advertising, which is be consumer obsessed, not competitor obsessed, which is, it feels like aligns exactly with kind of the way you flow.
Yeah, I feel like there are different kinds of designers around the business, including at Nike, that are they need to know what the competition's doing, because they're worried about price point, and they're worried about materials and factory issues and delivery times, and maybe that's a whole another a very important part of our business, but that's not what I do. I'm a different cat. So
I'm gonna switch gears now, Tinker.
Okay.
So this summer we're back to an Olympic year, which we're really happy about. And we mentioned we were chatting at the top of the hour about how it's exciting to see meets actually happening. And I know Hayward Field, Drake Relays is happening as we speak. Hayward Field is running a pretty large elite field this weekend. So bringing it back to your roots here, Hayward Field hosting Olympic trials this summer. What are your reactions to the final the final launch of this? Once this thing opened, have you been able to see any final pictures or experience it once some of the final structures are in place? What are your reactions
Robert,
to the
I've got a
final Hayward
tour
Field?
from Robert Johnson, the track coach at the U of O, the head track and field coach for men and women, and Robert was excited and proud to show me the whole facility, and I was with Jay Bowerman, who was one of Bill Bowerman's three sons. And Jay Bowerman was the one of his sons that actually was on the track team at Oregon. The other two weren't. But anyway, we both got a tour at the same time, and I have to say it was the facility is stunning, without to say the least. And the training facilities, which I actually penciled out how the facilities were going to work in my earlier designs, and they pretty much followed that. But they did just so much research and put so much more than I even thought of. It's a stunning facility to help young student athletes reach their fullest potential. It's really amazing. So it's the stadium, whether you like its aesthetics or not, it's spectacular in its own way. And I wrote this piece, back when I was critical of the project, because there were some things that I didn't agree with, and I had also, politically there was a lot going on. But that in a very real sense, I did make a little bit of a prognostication, or gave the readers a bit of a warning, which is in the late spring, when the big track meets roll around at Hayward Field, there's this fierce north wind, and probably all about it, right? It comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It comes right at.
That's the Friday night distance carnival. I feel it right now.
It would just pass straight through. It wasn't swirling. It just was one way or the other, and you could kind of deal with it. Once they've turned the whole thing into a real big horseshoe, I am still concerned that the nature of the Penn relays is a good place where inside that big stadium the winds can swirl because it's circular. They used to have a track at Husky Stadium in Seattle, which was a horseshoe, and the wind would come in on one side and come in on another, and if you're trying to run a record pace in anything, it was really difficult because you couldn't anticipate. And so I'm just crossing my fingers at this point that is not going to happen. But it very well could be the case down at Hayward. But let's just hope for track's sake that the most significant track stadium in America is going to be a good performing venue. So I'm hopeful that there's that swirl won't happen. We'll see.
Yeah,
we shall see.
It's so interesting. I saw the Ken Go kind of quotes that he put out in that article. I think you mentioned something about being concerned about the performance aspects. You being concerned about this venue being, I guess, enabling the opportunity for American and world records. And I think it's okay for us to, because we're all track nerds here, like we want to know from an architecture perspective. You mentioned the swirl, but like, is there anything that you like as far as like best practices when you look at a stadium or a venue that you would always like have top of priority if you were giving best practices to somebody building a new track and field stadium? What would those be? Like, what are things that you look out for? Yeah,
I think like most projects, everything is kind of case by case. Right now, actually, I'm kind of in negotiations with somebody to design a track stadium in another country. Because they liked the work that I had done previously for Hayward Field. But I'm not going to mention anything more about that because it's not a done deal at all. But the reality is,
did they give up naming rights yet?
When you go to design, when you work on architecture and you're looking at, and in the case of stadiums and athletic performance, there's just a tremendous list of criteria you need to worry about. And I remember Bill Bowerman being so upset with the north wind that would come into Hayward Field um, in the late spring when the big track meets were all happening, and it would do one of two things. It would either ruin a good multi-lap race because you're running into a headwind on the backstretch, or it would somebody would set a world or American or some kind of record, and it would be over the allowable, on the home stretch. And it used to drive him crazy, and so he always would talk about that damn north wind, and so that let's just hope that maybe through climate change that north wind changes or something. So I don't know, but I have to in the end, like anybody, the old stadium is torn down. It no longer exists, other than in the memories of the athletes and the fans that used to go there. I'm really hopeful that what Phil Knight and his teams have done is created a new and better Hayward Field. Ultimately, you know what I mean. So we all hope for that, and I think that has always been his intention. And even though I disagreed, even in the media with him, we are still friends. I still look up to him and thank him every day for the opportunities that I've had. And it's just been, even though there was that little bump in the road, I think all good relationships have those. And we've moved on. I've moved on, and I wish everybody that competes at Hayward Field the best, and certainly rooting for the Oregon Ducks too. And so I hope it is the best venue in America for performance, and I think that is the most important thing. I think that's coming from the Bill Bowerman school of thought. He was always concerned foremost that his athletes were performing to the best of their ability, and then even beyond. So, and he was always trying to help do that with his footwear designs. And by the way, Hayward Field was the first urethane track in America, if not the world. The Stevenson family donated some money, and Bill Bowerman cooked up the urethane composition, and then they poured it, and it was, I don't know if you remember, it was yellow. And it had a sandpaper finish, and it was really, really fast, but it was not so great to train on because it was hard. But that was the first urethane track, I think, ever. So he was an innovator. He was trying to help his athletes. He was trying to help defeat that north wind, but he was also trying to just make everybody faster, no matter what kind of wind there was. So, and I think Phil Knight has the same intent. He has a different way, different mannerisms, different, and different resources. And I hope that whatever I said in that article back in the day with Ken Go, I hope I'm proven wrong, because we all want track to not just survive, but to flourish. And this new stadium could be a piece of the puzzle to help track flourish at a higher level. So hopefully.
The further affirmation of that, if you're just listening to this podcast, that was said by a man currently wearing an OTC quarter zip.
Yes, sir.
You have an Oregon Track Club logo on the chest right now. So,
which I designed that logo.
Oh, you did? I actually did not know that. Not good enough research on my hand. Well, that's one of the few logos I feel like that has remain constant in track and field, and they OTC still does a strong job of evolving that their elite kit every year to still give your logo the love it deserves.
Well, I always figure that design is meant to be changed, but sometimes things can, in the right conditions, can be enduring, like an Air Max, like running shoe, or a really strong logo, or a nice piece of architecture, what have you. So it does. But I'm also I'm all about change. I'm preconditioned to deal with it, and if they were to redesign the logo, I go more power to them, and we'll who knows what they're planning. And I again personally I can't wait to get down and somehow participate in a track meet there. Not performing, but participating as an official or as a fan, so or a coach.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure they'll loop you in somehow, and you'll be calling fouls on the late rounds of the triple jump at some point. I want to I'd love to maybe zoom out a little bit, get abstract with architecture approach for stadiums, because I think it's an interesting conversation to have right now. Because in 2021, I feel like we're at this weird evolution of what sports stadiums should be, what venues, like large scale venues, should be. You mentioned the performance aspect of it, right? And catering it towards specifically the performance aspect. There's also I guess an innovation and capacity aspect, right? So like it feels like the approach to new stadium is starting to evolve from capacity focused and an efficient perspective to a more unique, multi-purpose kind of collaborative platform. So I guess from an architecture perspective and a designer perspective, how do we modernize venues without losing the romance and the historical identity that got us here? I think about these these MLS stadiums, right? They feel like a little bit more, they feel like a little bit more intimate almost, right? So how do we continue to replicate that? And I'm thinking specifically almost down the line into, LA 2028, like all these venues around this amazing city. Like, how do we modernize our venues but not lose the intimacy?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that subject because I've designed some other stuff for stadiums, and I've designed some improvements for Autzen Stadium, and I'm working actually on more improvements to Autzen Stadium for the football program in Oregon. Having said that, it's stadiums are complex, and they sometimes they have to serve different kinds of purposes. But overall, I think the future of stadiums is adaptability, which means, I think that an empty stadium is not very fun to be in. I don't care how beautiful it is. A filled stadium, as crummy as it might be, is exciting. It could be just a beat up old stadium, but if it's packed to the gills and people are excited, then it's a fun experience. I think though, what's going to happen in the future, and it is to a certain extent already, which is stadiums are going to continue to be designed to basically try and get people out of their living rooms and their big screen TVs and to come and experience sports in person. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, it needs to be more comfortable. Secondly, there needs to be, I think, a bigger entertainment aspect, which is more interesting architecture, more fun design work. And then thirdly, I think, is that intimacy thing you just discussed, you just mentioned, which is a stadium like an MLS stadium, or a lot of stadiums in England in particular, for even the Premiership stadiums, they're not overly large, and so they pack them all the time. But let's just say you had a stadium that had 40,000 seats, and that's relatively intimate for college football or pro football or soccer. Technology is moving forward where more seats can pop up. Actually, the stadium can change shape, and you can add capacity. But the real important factor is still the intimacy part. So keeping people as close to the playing field as possible allows for the exchange of energy between the athletes and the fans. And I think that's really an important notion that got away from a lot of designers over the past 50 to 60 years. big concrete edifices, you know, and people were too far away from the field, and you know the nosebleed seats were 100 rows up and all that. Now there's a recognition that it's people if you want to get them to come out of their living rooms and drive and pay to go see a sporting event, it better be fun, and it better be more interesting than just sitting again watching it on television. So that's really the future of stadiums, and I'm actually there's several firms around the world that do design work, and I've been consulted before by them, and I have a few notions about how to proceed on stadium design for various sports actually. So
Good to hear.
I'm not a licensed architect anymore. I used to be. But that doesn't mean I actually can't still design and then collaborate with a licensed practitioner.
Absolutely.
So I can still be a designer, but I can't actually call myself an architect anymore. But that's okay, because I do as much architecture now as I ever did. So.
Amazing. Yeah, consult and collaborate. That still counts, right? That's interesting. I think.
Yeah.
The you know, making stadiums kind of modular, right? It's like adding and taking away things.
Modularity with technology can allow for adaptability. So the modularity contributes to the ability to adapt to different events, different sizes of crowds, and of course different sports themselves. And so that's, to me, that's part of the future, and we're starting to see that happen here and there. So
yeah. Well, I know I'm trying to imagine a track back inside the Rose Bowl Stadium, and maybe for 2028 they'll knock on your door. I hope they do. But you know, this conversation about stadiums,
this interview will help me get that job.
Right. I think you have more connections than I do. I'll send it their way. But talking about stadiums, right? And this is, you know, we could marry this as a parallel to shoes, right? Making something more approachable to a wider audience, but honoring what it got you there in the first place, right? So it like, we've talked about it with stadiums, but if you were consulting a designer, right? And that designer was handed something as, you know, cherished, like the Jordan, right? Like a really cherished footwear line. What is your general feedback to somebody who's given the reins and the responsibility to, I guess, finesse a family of shoes that people hold dear? Like how do they stay close to the ground? How do they stay grounded? We mentioned at the top of the hour, it's fun to take big swings, and we need that, but also that nuance of evolving things slowly, but not losing sight of that core identity. Like, you know, if I was a young designer, what would you say to me if I was in charge of a new footwear line like that?
I would say that you need to, you know, kind of like training for the decathlon. You need to maybe train different design muscles, and one muscle would be to honor the past, and some people really love when design mixes old and new together, and that's difficult to do because it's eclectic and can be a mess. But if masterfully done, it's probably the coolest stuff that we see, which is like a really cool car that kind of looks like something that you may have seen your parents drive back in the 1950s or 60s or something, and yet it's a modern car. And those are always, I think that's a trend right now, where people are yearning for connections to the past, connections to things that they've loved for many years. Yet everybody wants modern performance and a new twist. And so the new twist is kind of lumped in with honoring the past. So that's kind of a design muscle that can be developed, where you have a sense of how to do that. And then of course there's just the no holds barred, going to the future. This is a spaceship. we're not trying to attach it to anything other than maybe super high performance new technology. And you know, we have shoes that lace themselves, right? They're electrically powered shoes
Absolutely.
that sense the shape of your foot and pull a series of cables around your foot appropriately. That's not tied to anything in the past, except for an old movie. But the reality is that's another muscle that if I was you know, speaking to a young designer, I'd go, well, you know, you should know about you should understand how to connect new design work to things that people have loved for many years. And you should also have the ability to look beyond that and just, well, what's a brave new world look like, irrespective of what's happened before. And so that's to me that kind of thought process is valuable because you can go in so many different directions with those skills, with those muscles, those design muscles trained up just right.
Yeah, Tinker, actually, one of my first agencies, Industry, we had a pair of Earls framed in the lobby.
There you go.
When you walked in, so big homage there. But one thing, you know, because I think it's as appropriate to talk about today around Earth Day. One of the major innovations now that people are trying to wield and align into design, right, is sustainability. So this is like essentially a whole new technology and an innovation and an engineering challenge that now you're making designers prioritize almost first, but making it, you also have to like acknowledge that there's a new there's like this new material. So like, how do you meld sustainability and design in 2021?
Well, that's a great question because there are a lot of people that make claims about sustainability, environmentalism, and Nike has actually shied away from that a little bit because we've been working on it for 20 years, sustainability. And so when I sit down to design a project, or any number of our top designers who are working on innovation in particular, it isn't the first thing because it is expected. So the materials, palettes, the processes, those things have already been worked on at Nike for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And when we draw up something, it's not like the first thing that pops up so much because it is expected. So sustainability is expected on our most high tech projects, and that's because we have people, technicians, anatomists, scientists, you name it, searching for new materials all over the world and new processes. And that just naturally gets fed into our process. Yeah, I think about sustainability, but my job is still to design something that works.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like, because it's built into your guts.
Yeah. So
before it gets to your plate, it's already sustainable.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
Well, because of the processes that Nike has already put in place, it sounds like by the time it gets put on your plate, it's already, the process is sustainable. So that's not something that you have typically concern yourself with.
We can or can't use because of their sustainability. We have processes that are already in place and being improved on a regular basis, and it's just and by the way, if I think of something that is more sustainable and it's a new idea, then that's cool too. But but my job really is still to design and get built something that helps somebody do what they love to do and helps them perform in their chosen arena of fitness and sports and just living life. And so that's job one. It always has been for me, and along the way, we've contributed a lot to the sustainability issue through all of the myriad of people that we have that are working on it all the time. So, and if by the way, if you throw up a design that can't be done sustainably, it doesn't make it. Doesn't make it. So there you go.
Tigger, I have two.
I think Nike is a good global is becoming a great, but right now is a really good global sustainable citizen, sustainability citizen. But our job isn't done yet. There's still a lot more to do, right? We're all trying to do better, and we have a lot of people working on this stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not a black and white thing, right? It's a constantly evolving.
It's not black and white. And you know what? There will be some new innovations in the next couple of years that will allow us all to be even more sustainable. So in our daily lives, as well as our chosen activities. So I'm excited.
Tigger, I have two. Yeah, me too. I have two kind of closing, fun, almost lightning round questions for you. And I'm going to bring it back to, I guess, maybe your basketball design work. At Adidas, we had this term, well, at least in the people I knew, we had this term called potato head, which was a shoe that we had slapped together with different elements of other shoes, right? So essentially, it would be like, we took the upper of a track spike, and we used the midsole of a racing flat, and different kind of elements and overlays that we would love to see mesh together, but never finally saw the light of day. If you could, I'm looking at the evolution of kind of the Nike basketball line. Zion just signed on to Jordan Brand. Have there been any new iterations or any takedowns that you would love to mash together from your experience in your Jordan days, whether that be a midsole from a Jordan or an overlay from the Kobe, or a lacing system maybe from maybe some of Kyrie's? Is there anything that any kind of player specific models that you wish you could meld together as a quote unquote potato head?
As an innovator, that's not really my bag. However, so Spike Lee called me up several years ago, and he collaborates with us from time to time, and I've known him for a long time. And he said, I got the okay by MJ to we're going to do a shoe. We're going to do a shoe, and I want you to be the designer. And I'm like, oh, cool. So and I said, what well, how do you want to start this? And he goes, I don't know. What do you think? I said, how about we take how many? And I asked him this question first. I said, how many commercials have you done for us for different Air Jordans? And he knew right away, 7 different Air Jordans I've done commercials for. Either wrote them, directed them, or starred in them. And I said, okay, let's take every shoe that you helped advertise, and we're going to take a component from that shoe, and we're going to slam it all together, Mr. Potato Head style, and we're going to see what happens. So we did it. And it's called the Spizike. And you can look it up. And it is a combination of 7 different Air Jordans. So that one was unique in that I wasn't really doing it for performance, for an athlete at the high performance level. It was strictly just kind of a fun project to do with Spike, and of course the collectors just went crazy for it. And I love the notion that sitting there with Spike in a hotel room an hour and a half before a premiere for a new movie, and we're going over his sneaker, the Spizike. And I'm like looking at my watch. I said, don't you have to go to your premiere for your movie? And he goes, this is way more.
Bagged it. Which movie?
Inside Man.
Okay.
With Denzel. Which he loved, but which was a movie he did. He was happy about that movie. But I think it was Inside Man. Anyway, he had to do we were in LA. He had to do a premiere, at a big premiere. And I'm in this hotel room and we're going over the final deal with Spizike, and that had him so excited. More than I thought was more excited about that than his movie, which to me, it just sort of speaks to the power of, people wanting to be creative in different ways, right? So he's used to doing movies. Doing shoes wasn't quite something something he had done as much, and it was exciting for him. It was new, it was different. So, and the fact that it was this weird combination of componentry that that came together, and it came. In fact, I know it did very well as a limited edition, collaborative sneaker design.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well,
if
you quick look at it on any of the shoe sites, whether that be Fight Club or StockX, it is limited and it's cherished, as you can probably guess. Last question for you, Tinker. Similar kind of fun lightning round question. I don't know what your collection looks like, how you house it, where you house it, your personal shoe collection. But is there ever a day where you open up your closet, you see a pair of shoes, and you say to yourself, damn, I can't believe this didn't get more popular. I can't believe this one blow up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I actually, I don't really have a very well curated collection. I'm almost not organized and built that way. I'm kind of like on to the next thing. And so stuff's kind of all over the place. But I do run across shoes, and I'm like, God, that was pretty good design. I wonder why that one didn't take off. But I don't dwell on it at all. I mean, it's like, oh, okay. But there's so many. I mean, somebody just did. I Was So Collector just rated the top 100 Nike shoes of all time, and I don't really, pay much attention to that stuff. Although So Collector is a fine organization, and they really know their stuff, I think. But they rated the top 100 Nike shoes of all time, and so this is for almost 50 years of Nike, and out of the top 100, 32 of them I had designed. And the number one was the Air Max 1, which was the first one I designed. So sometimes, and there were some on the list that I had designed. I'm like, I don't even think that one's that great. That's on the list, but it's.
There's one that was underrated or not on the list at all.
Be on any list because we didn't make that many. Was a black trainer, a very lightweight trainer for Michael Johnson. It was black and had very thin gold reinforcing straps all the way around it, real thin straps. And it looked like it was a striped black and gold striped shoe. And that was on that top 100 list. How they even knew about it, I don't even know. But it was on the top 100 list. And I'm like, now that's a shoe that shoe probably should have been made. We should have made, a couple of 100,000 of them or something. So I loved working with Michael Johnson. He's a very intelligent, very nice, and communicative person, and very, very thoughtful and thankful. He's been a great one. Still say hi to him from time to time.
Hey, beautiful narrative there, Tinker, to wrap things up for our audience in some Johnson throwbacks there. I think some of us will appreciate that. Tinker, thank you so much for your time, and I think this has been a great collaborative conversation. I want to quote that note that you mentioned the letter that you got from Bill Bowerman. And he articulated that Tinker Hatfield, architect, shoe designer, track athlete, husband, father, this fulfills the obligations of the University of Oregon. I thought, what a way and what a fulfilling and justified way to to tack things off, and you've also fulfilled all the obligations that we can ask for as track fans. So we hope you continue to jam on designs and fill your kind of creative cup here over the next few years.
Oh, well, thank you. I've been very fortunate to be connected with a lot of really great people, and in the end, it's the collaborations that really do produce the best stuff. So I'm lucky. So thank you. I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and I've always enjoyed your, the track and field community and what you've contributed to it. And so, and I hope that there's a whole lot more that we can do in the future. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Tinker. Well, I hope to see you, in the flesh at a real track and field event here soon.
Yeah, the real track meet. Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Thanks again for your time, sir. All right. Our thanks to the one and only Tinker Hatfield for giving us so much time. Incredible to catch up with him and dive into so many tiers of topics and just kind of float along the imagination there. I think my favorite moment in that conversation.
Sorry, I just want to make sure he never thought of you, Alex, while you were at Adidas. He was pretty clear. He didn't. No.
Did you ever think of us? No. Hard pass. No. Yeah, that's like
across the street looking at your windows.
And I applaud him for that. And it's like one of the best pieces of feedback I've ever gotten is to be consumer obsessed instead of competitor obsessed. And you can see it in everything he does, right? It's not like we chatted about this a little bit. He doesn't do like small iterations. There's no industry trend that he's like, the Jordan brand never like leaned into like industry trends. It was like bold, sweeping, like crazy new evolutions of like what we thought footwear could even be, right? So I just thought that was such an interesting insight, and I think something that like sports companies as a whole, and I could say, as I'm in the advertising world right now, like I think every company should be consumer first instead of competitor, right? It's easy to get trapped into like the brain of like what your competitor spend is and your share of voice in the audience, blah, 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 blah. But like, it's those outliers, right? And the older I get, the more I notice the people who like aren't following trends. And Tinker has like always been that maverick. He's always been that renegade. He's always kind of lived in his own silo and he's done his own thing. So I think you can see that in everything he's pushed out. So I don't know, Ryan, that was kind of my favorite moment of the conversation.
He likes to push out his ideas. He doesn't like to worry about other people's ideas. And I think we saw that with his feedback of Hayward Field. He was very vocal about, and this is one of the parts of the conversation I was looking forward to, because that was knowing Tinker and knowing how influential he is and how well respected he is as a designer. Not only did he put in a design for the new Hayward, they didn't go with him, and then he was very vocal about the design they chose, right? And so to now, months later, and maybe almost 2 years later, see that he's gone back, he's seen it, he's very complimentary of it, and admitting of, man, they did an amazing job. They did some things. It sounded like they'd done some things that he envisioned, but they went way above and beyond in aspects where he didn't even dig as deep. And so it was cool to hear him say that he's seen it and he really appreciated what they've done. But if you picked it up, there's still a concern about the north wind. And that concern stems from Bill Bowerman and back in the day, right? And so it was just interesting to hear him talk through that, and ultimately, like, this is a guy, like, he brought up the relationship with him and Phil Knight and how this was kind of a bump in the road of that relationship, and it's just crazy to hear. I mean, he's so open about it. He said, Phil is like someone I look up to and I appreciate, and I tell him all the time, thank you for all these opportunities you've given me. So it doesn't sound like it's something that like tore them apart, but it's a bump in the road, and just thinking about their history at Oregon, then to Nike, in some things you read, Knight credits him for helping Nike, really turn the corner and stay alive and become what they've become through his work with the Jordan brand. So it's just crazy to think about that history and how he was this track and field athlete under Bill Bowerman, started working at this track and field company at Nike, and then helped it become what we know Nike it is today, and also create another iconic brand, not outside of Nike or within Nike, you could say, with Jordan. And it's just the pieces he's touched. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and the athletes he's worked with too, right? It's like we were talking about Jordan. He also worked with like Andre Agassi, and it's why, like, yeah, I wonder like what those iconic, silhouettes would have looked like if it went to somebody who, like did just lean into like small, marginal, incremental changes to footwear, right? Like we may never have seen the Air Max, right? Like the Air Max was this bizarre, it's like literally a bubble, like a visible bubble. Like you would like visible technology, like almost felt janky, right? Like there's a piece to there kind of used to be that perception, but like now it's like something that's embraced, and that's kind of like also like, how I kind of tied into that 4%, right? Which like it's like it's a performance piece, but it's also an identity. Like that big old midsole that we all know now, like that is speed. It's completely changed our perspective of like what the silhouette of a running shoe should be.
Yeah. And on the 4% conversation, I mean, I like how he was clear in saying we didn't create a product that creates an advantage or an unfair advantage. We created a product that it was a more efficient product for runners. And he was like, you still have to be a good runner, and like, I'm not going to throw on that shoe and run 2 hours. Like Eliud Kipchoge had, he's a 2:01 guy that broke 2 hours. So just that, that point of this is an improvement in performance, but it's not putting jetpacks on your shoes and helping you fly through the air. So that said, he said, there's are things that we work on, and you're like, oh, this might be over the line. And it just makes you wonder, like, man, what are they working on, and how far ahead are they, where they have to pump the brakes and be like, oh, we're not quite ready for this, or maybe this wouldn't actually be quite as accepted. So you always wonder what's under the curtain that's been worked on with some of these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, it's like innovation rewards the most efficient, right? And like at the end of the day, like that's why Eliud Kipchoge is like the star that he is because we found this innovation, but that innovation only works on the most efficient motor on the planet. And like it just happened that we married the right, car chassis with the right motor in the 4% and the Eliud Kipchoge, right? And like we're just lucky to kind of be a part of that moment. And Tinker was, lucky to be served in that moment with Jordan. And so, I just thought it was fun to anytime we can align Eliud Kipchoge and Michael Jordan, like that's a fun moment. So I agree, Ryan. It was kind of cool to consider like what's going on behind the curtain. And at the end of the day, we find out that track influenced the Jordan line. Track influenced everything that Tinker did. And at the end of the day, speed wins, explosiveness wins. Who knows what those that footwear would have looked like if Tinker wasn't a man of Oregon and a man of the pole vault and a man of Bowerman before anything. So really interesting insights. And I think we're going to continue to pull that curtain back, look behind the curtain, see what's going down, see who's behind the curtain, what their vision is for sport moving forward and the industry at large. But we'll get into that in our next episode a little bit deeper. So again, thanks for joining us on season opener of season 2 of Beneath the Grandstand. We'll see you next time.